Welcome to the Fundraising Elevator, where we're all headed up. This podcast is a production of ElevateNonprofit.com, an online learning platform for fundraising event professionals. We're coming to you today from the studios of the AV department. Please welcome our hosts, Kristin Steele and Samantha Swaim.
Hi, y'all. Welcome to the Fundraising Elevator, where we all are, in fact, headed up. And we are headed into summer break, more importantly. That's for everyone. So time is a precious resource, and we don't get it back. But also figuring out how to use that time for most impact to make our lives smarter, not harder, is where we're at. So this is the end of season 1 for the Fundraising Elevator.
Crazy.
I
44
know.
episodes.
44 episodes, and here
Thanks
we
for
are.
being on the journey with us, friends.
And thank you so much to our amazing, amazing partners at the AV department for producing the heck out of this podcast week after week.
So grateful.
So if you're getting so much out of this podcast, please share it.
Yes.
Like, share, send it out. Our goal is to get as many tools and resources into the nonprofit sector as possible, because you all are superheroes, and we want you to get to the finish line.
And we're on all your favorite streaming
All of them.
platforms. YouTube, SoundCloud, Spotify, Apple Podcast. You can find us everywhere.
I'm sure there are others.
Subscribe.
I don't even know what they are. But subscribe and share and like and all the things. So we want to start today's conversation off with the idea of self-care and the importance of that and centering that, because I think we all, as we are in or touch the nonprofit sector, know that self-care is something that is completely necessary for our work.
Yes.
But it has not always been something that's been made time or allowances for. So we want to figure out how to continue to empower that notion of people taking what they need to fill the cup, because empty cups are really hard to keep pulling stuff out of. So our goal today is to center that idea, and to also center the idea of how you can make the most impact without spinning wheels. So we want to highlight, I think, 4 different kind of subject areas today as you head into summer break, that you can balance the vacation time you should be taking with some maybe quieter time to make some really big impact. So we want to talk about, sort of as spring season is winding down and the ramp up to fall is right around the corner, where you can be spending your most precious commodity of time for impact. So
Perfect.
First and foremost, make sure you have a vacation on the books.
Yes.
If you don't, do it right now. Pause
That's
this
important.
podcast. Go. Get something on the calendar, even if it's an in-town day where you're not answering, seeing, doing. Get out in the woods, do whatever, but fill your cup first and foremost.
You've been reading a book I wanted to ask you about.
Yeah.
So A Slow Productivity is a book that you've been really leaning into lately. I wanted to ask if you would share that with folks about this idea of taking the time that you need and how time plays an impact in success.
So Slow Productivity, we're going to put links to it in the show notes so that you too can add it to your list of books to read, right?
While laying in a hammock on a beach.
While laying in a hammock on a beach. But Rich Roll podcast actually has a really great interview with Cal, the author, and gives you sort of the salient points. So if you don't have time for a deep dive into the book, you can kind of elevate those points. But it's basically how to simplify your workflow and put up some designated spaces that you're going to work in, so that you're not drawn to this idea of multitasking, because as the studies continue to promote, multitasking is less tasking well. And so it's how to go deep and specific and do really good work on the things that you really care about, and to find a way to edit out the pieces that aren't serving those. So it's a really great book. I think I offer that as a caveat. Putting it directly into effect right now and boxing it, like, it's a process, and it's planting a seed of an idea of where you can continue to sequence your work life toward, and what that can look like, and what you can marinate on to figure out, like, what are the 3-4 things, my streams of work, and what do I really want them to look like? And it explores the idea of overhead tax, which I think is something we experience all the time. The longer a project sits on your plate and continues getting kicked down the curb, you keep paying an overhead tax on that task being on your plate. So you're still having meetings about it. you're still sending emails about it. So really at the core of slow productivity is moving things along.
Execution.
And not continuing to ideate. We all have, let's gather and ideate about, let's simplify that time and get at moving things forward, making decisions, moving them along. And so I think that at the core is some of the things we want to elevate today so that you can start to execute and move things along without continuing to just talk about them ad nauseum and take up time and space.
We had a podcast episode in season 1 with Juan Martinez, a development director who is really, really good at relationships. And unfortunately, in the world of fundraising, I think when we don't prioritize time, we lose relationships, right? Yep. We set that aside for the tasks, for the to-dos. And one of the ways that he is able to accomplish what he's able to accomplish with his relationship building is that he has dedicated, carved out time. That is call time, that is meeting time. He has a time set aside every week that is coffee dates and lunch dates. He has a time set aside every week that is specifically for call time. And even if he doesn't have a radar or a list of these are the folks on my radar I need to call, he uses that time to still pick up the phone and start calling donors. So it becomes that intentional use of time that I think is so important. And when we see development teams or individuals wearing many hats, super taxed, that is always the first thing that goes out the door is relationships. So for all our friends out there that kind of follow a school schedule, if you're fundraising for a school, Beth McGorry, I'm talking to you, this tends to be a quieter time of year. And our friends that are out there raising money for schools are sort of planning for the year ahead, starting to look at, at having some breathing room and some vacation time with their summer. And this is also a good time for us to think about what could I do now that moves the needle and sort of stops that overhead tax or that sort of burden tax of having things still on your calendar.
Well, and for me, I don't know how it is for y'all, but I hear some things. So I think I'm not alone in this. One of my biggest overhead taxes is email. It's a boomerang center,
it is.
Right? You get in there, you get into your email, you're like, yay, clearing it out of my box. Wow, it comes right back.
Right.
No, how many emails do we have to have about a meeting?
Right.
Let's have the meeting or let's have the conversation and move on. But I think this is the idea that maybe in summer with people on vacation,
you'll get less boomerang.
Get out of the email.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at the other things that are taking up brain space for you. Maybe it's your event.
Well, let's talk about the event.
Let's talk about some of the key pieces for your event that you could actually move forward and gain traction and make some leaps and bounds forward momentum on your event so that when the boomerangs start, you already have some key scaffolding in place that you're working and making forward success on.
Agree. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Well, let's dive in a little bit to a couple of the to-dos that I think are really sort of timely around the summer. And the first one that comes to mind for me is corporate sponsorship.
Yep.
So corporate sponsorship, we often see is really impacted by time. That's the element that it needs a long burn. You need to have conversations with that corporate partner. They need to have internal conversations. And often their decisions are made on a calendar year basis. They're not made based on your event timeline. So we see that the summer tends to be a good way to get ahead of your corporate sponsorship, especially when you are talking to anyone that is on a fiscal year budget. So budgeting with a fiscal year that ends matched with the calendar year, let's say, for example, the end of their fiscal year is December 31st. Yep. They are budgeting in October for next year's expenses. And you want to be in front of that. You want to be in their budget.
So October 2024, y'all,
yes.
They're budgeting for events in 2025.
And I hear from folks often, we are getting no's from sponsors. Well, usually it's because they're working within a 3 to 6 month window of their event. Get, 14-month window and start talking about next year's events. Couple of key things that you can do. Talk about umbrella sponsorships. Yep. Now, everyone in the corporate sector who has a giving officer or a sponsorship protocol, it is the job of that giving officer to give away resources and to give away funds. You can make their job easier by doing a couple of key things and really showing up as a partner for them. One is that you can present to them in an umbrella format all of the ways that they could be involved with your organization all at once. So you don't have to have 4 meetings about 4 different events or 4 different engagements. You can have one meeting that talks about the entire year. That requires some planning. So summer is a good time to get ahead of it.
Right.
Put together that sponsorship proposal, meet with your sponsors once, talk to them about what a year-long engagement looks like, and give them options that are associated with all of the different ways they can be involved. And get it done in advance of their budgeting cycle so that the ask of them could be instead, I know you sponsored our big gala at $5,000 this past year. We want to ask you to sponsor all of our programs and events coming up, and we want to make a $25,000 ask of you. That way they have time to go advocate and get it in their budget cycle for the year. Here's the other trick though. If you have conversations with corporate partners before the end of the fiscal year, as they are starting to prep for the end of their fiscal year, they also are starting to look at where they have leftover funds budgeted from this year. It happens, not always, but sometimes it happens, right? Maybe they had funds carved out for an organization and that organization no longer exists or it merged.
Their event got canceled.
That they end up with some oftentimes leftover resources that they still are going to give to a nonprofit so that they continue to get their tax benefit. And if you have a conversation with them in the summer before their fall planning, they also can be looking at their end of year 2024 giving and see if there's anything else that's available to you. You could even ask them that. I'm here to talk to you about 2025 and all of the ways you could be involved. But I also wanted to ask if you have any funds remaining at the end of 2024, if we could be considered, so that you are really capitalizing on time. If you're listening to this podcast and it's, say, February and you're behind the ball, you can easily get in front of the ball by starting the conversation with your corporate partners about, okay, I know I'm a little late this year. How do we start talking to you about next year? So you can start to build that relationship and sort of jump off that hamster wheel and get in their giving cycle.
Can I pull one thread through? Because I do feel like there's a fundamental kernel here that is still either being wrestled with by people as an untruth or is new information to people. In the same way you and your organizations set an annual budget, so do your corporate friends.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think sometimes there's a misnomer that there's just kind of a rolling financial wheel.
Right.
Where maybe it's month to month or quarter to quarter, where they just sort of, they take a look at what's on their table for submissions right there and go, yes, all of these, or no, all of these. It's like, no, it's a year-long strategy for them in the same way it is for you in hitting fundraising numbers. And so I think the sooner people just get on that as a truth and line it up with their annual calendar of budgeting, then that's where partnership can start because you're both in the same place. If you're fighting the truth of what a budgeting cycle is for your corporate sponsor, you're never going to be in line with that, and you're never going to be able to be a true partner to them.
So besides getting on the same page with timing, though, being a good partner, I think also shows up in how you close out the year with them. And this is also a good time to do that. So let's say, for example, that you had a spring fundraising event, or you had a fundraising event last fall and you haven't closed the door with them on thanking them for their support last year. This is a great time to do something called a fulfillment package. Not a lot of folks do this. And I find that when I talk to corporate giving officers, that they indicate this is something that is required of them, is going through all of their partnership agreements and making sure that, one, they got all the benefits that were agreed on, and two, understanding the impact or implication of those benefits, right? Like, can we report up to our team all of the visibility that we garnered from this sponsorship to justify funding for next year? You can do that work for them. You can stand out from the crowd by sending them a fulfillment package. And it's pretty simple. The fulfillment package that we recommend it can be digital. It can be a list of all the benefits and photos or images or representation of those sort of benefits, as well as a report out of impact. So let's say, for example, a one sheet that just identifies their name, email, and link to their business was in 6 email blasts. That's a total of 10,000 subscribers to our email list 6 times, so 60,000 viewers. You can give them those numbers and analytics. You can also tell them how many people attended. You can tell them, if you had a virtual element, how many people follow you on social media, how many people tuned in, where they tuned in from. So that kind of report out this time of year is a great way to sort of close out the support that you've had in the past, anywhere from 6 to 18 months with a sponsor, and then initiate the following conversation about what the next year could look like. So that's the biggest one, I think, during the summer that could be utilized.
We've all bought the birthday present for the niece or nephew, wondered if it arrived.
Right. Never heard.
If they liked it. Never got a thank you note. And then when it comes around to be birthday time again, we go,
yeah,
what is that?
I'm not sure.
Same.
Yeah, same. It's the same idea that we want to be good stewards. We want to give gratitude before we ask again.
Yep.
The other thing I think that is really important, this is a conversation that we were just having with the team here in the studio about the impact of who is in your room.
Absolutely.
And I think that, if you talk to any auctioneer, they're looking for where are your big donors, right? If you talk to someone who's focused on community-centric fundraising, they're looking to how do we include our entire community?
Yep.
I think that the most important thing for you to do first is identify what the purpose and the design of the event is and who needs to be in the room to make that purpose happen. We recently had an organization whose big gala, their goal is this is a community building event. That's their purpose. So they allocate 250 tickets available for purchase and 100 tickets that are community tickets that they host their clients using those community tickets. That's in their budget plan. It's in their budget strategy. And it really makes for an event that is uniquely them. It is very specifically them.
Yep.
But those other 250, to make this model work for them, they need to make sure that those donors are the decision makers from some of their partner organizations and are their big donors. So this is the time to reach out to those key relationship folks about getting involved for next year. In the same way that you're talking about sponsorship, this is a great time for you to identify if you want 250 key people in the room, that's 25 tables, right? Yep. Tables of 10. And so making a short list of those 25 relationships, sponsors, vendors, partner organizations. In this particular case, this is a health organization and they partner with all the local hospital systems. And securing those 25 confirmations so you know that they are in the room with their team. That way, the model works. If they don't take the time to do that, then they're just doing what I call like spray marketing, right? It's like, buy a ticket, buy a ticket, buy a ticket, buy a ticket. And soon you're like singing into the wind and no one is buying a ticket.
Well, because you're making something transactional that should be relationship-based.
Absolutely.
That's the crucial difference.
And this is a great time to call that key sponsor or that key donor and go sit on a patio and have a drink and build a relationship with them. Go to lunch, go to coffee. We forgot how to do that during the pandemic. Zoom just got so much easier.
In many cases, we couldn't.
We couldn't.
Yep.
And now this is the time to do that.
Yep.
So who is in your room? This is a time to think about the key purpose of the event and who you need to make sure you're reaching out to secure as a host or a table host or a sponsor, and then the follow-up with the corporate partners. Yep. Those are 2 key elements that I think in the summer it's a great way to get ahead. Yep. What are areas that you focus on this time of year as you're thinking about the events coming in the fall?
Yep. Well, because of how I'm hardwired, I automatically start thinking about what's going to take place on your program stage for your fall events. And I think sometimes there's a build everything first.
Yeah.
And then we start thinking about what's actually going to happen during the program. And I think the key is to actually reverse engineer some of that thinking. In the same way that your venue is a piece, and your program, your story is pretty foundational to your event. I would actually say it's the foundation of your event.
Yeah.
So you sort of starting the springboard idea of marketing to dovetail into that. Your story starts when I first learn about your event. So start telling people about your event.
Yeah.
It's summer, yes, but fall's coming. My calendar's filling up.
Right.
Getting things on my radar, thinking about how are we starting the story and what story are we going to tell at the event? Because you don't want to sell me an idea and then have me show up at your event and have what's happening during the program feel completely disconnected from the story you've started to tell me. So it's coming up with a whole cohesive program. And now you have time, and head nod to slow productivity. Maybe as the volume comes down slightly, you have the time to really think and ideate and dream about what the story is that you want to tell on your program stage. This is when you should be asking some of those key people you want to speak.
Yeah, especially if you have a fall event.
Because nothing feels like you either forgot or I'm 12th tier choice than you coming to me in mid-September for an early October event.
Right.
Whether it's your MC or somebody who's
a performer.
Yeah. Who's somebody, maybe not your ED, is being your organizational speaker. Like thinking through, because it may not be available for everybody. This gives you runway then to be like, okay, first idea isn't going to work. What's our next idea? How can that happen? It gives you time to implement all those pieces, but it also gives you time to continue to build that rapport and build that story. Also, if you are using video at your event, my gosh, y'all, videos take time to turn.
They do.
You have to get on schedules with your video team to be able to get them out. You have to get them on subjects calendars to be able to do interviews. And then you want your production partners to have the time to cut you an amazing video, to edit an amazing video, and for there to be built in a couple rounds of edits so that you can really work together and achieve exactly what you want.
Yeah.
Last minute stuff on video, things can go sideways. Interviews cannot happen. You need runway to have, in the same way that speaker might not be available. The folks you want to be the subjects of your video, they may not want to do it.
Yeah.
If you're counting on them and then you wait to the last minute, sorry, that's your deadline problem, not mine, right? So I think people don't give the program adequate runway.
Yeah, it's true.
And they also don't give it adequate dream space. And I think that's the thing I would really like to encourage folks to think about is this is the creative space for you to tell the authentic, dynamic story of your organization. That takes time.
Yeah.
And it takes effort. But that lift becomes less if you can start to scaffold it in and get the voices in the mix that you want in the mix. I think some people feel like they have to wait on the storytelling for some late development. It's like, yes, there are organizations that work in maybe a dynamic political space, or have local issues that are potentially impacting how some of the pieces on their program is going to happen. Great. Start to isolate those pieces and be like, you know what? We're actually going to wait to do the ED speech until 6 weeks out from the event. But there's no reason we couldn't do the special appeal video now. There's no reason we couldn't start to think about how we're putting our organizational video together to tell the story of big picture, our organizations and programs. I think sometimes people think like it's too early.
Right.
And yet
No,
when we get there
early.
and we get in the weeds, it's way too late.
Well, and this becomes a marketing tool.
Yes.
Because if you know who your speakers are, you know who your honorees are, you know who your entertainment is, this all becomes a marketing tool that now you have content throughout the end of the summer into fall to use as sort of a build up to your event. So I think this is a perfect time to be thinking about your program elements.
And not only that, but you specifically brought up honorees, which I think is a key consideration for a lot of folks at their events.
Yeah.
It allows you to build the proper relationship with your honorees to make it that the honorees are helping you put the right people in the room.
Absolutely.
And so when it feels like an afterthought, if you all of a sudden are like, we'd like to honor you at this event in 2 weeks or whatever, all of a sudden I go, it gets hard for me to go to my people that I want to bring in to support your organization and say, hey, everybody,
Yeah.
want to go to this event? And so it allows you time to cultivate. And I think sometimes people underestimate the potential of cultivation when done over time.
Yeah.
And so I think that's super important. I think the other thing, I know I'm going to say it. I'm going to say 2025, y'all.
Yeah, it's coming.
So summer is a great time to think of planning for the year ahead.
Yeah.
So if you've just literally slid in sideways out of your spring fundraising event, congratulations.
Take a breath.
You made it.
Yes.
Take a breath, but don't breathe too long on getting some of the major scaffolding together for 2025.
Yeah.
If you are going to have this event again in spring, we're hearing from somebody. You can listen to episode 43 with Tracy Lortz talking about event venues. They're booking year plus in advance. So if you've come out of your spring event, you know you want to have it at X venue, and you know when dates that you're considering, those should be locked in.
Yeah, get those locked in
They
now.
need to be locked in now if they're not already, because if you sleep on it and wait till fall, there's a magic thing that happens around Labor Day. People kind of wake up and go, oh my gosh, we're going to have an event. You may not be able to do that. So I think in continuing partnerships and relationships with your vendors, circling back around and debriefing what just happened, like that was amazing. We loved it. Here are the things we're looking forward to next year. Put us on for this date.
Yeah.
Get those key,
Agree.
your auctioneer, your venue, your date, your
Your planner.
your AV partner. Get your key partners that get you to the finish line every year. Let them know, yay, contract set. Don't worry about it. I got you. Let's start work together. Because I do think longer runway on that, you have more time to learn from their expertise, and they get to ideate about your event and bring ideas to the table. But also you can eliminate the stress of all of a sudden your venue doesn't have that date available and now you got to scramble.
Yeah.
So do yourself a favor. It feels so hard. You're like, I just put that event to bed, and I know the event is not the only thing on your plate. I get it. You're starting to look at, great, what's our year-end direct mail? Like, I get where you all are at, but having a phone call with your venue and asking them to send over a contract and get that signed, it's not a huge lift, and it will save you so much overhead tax going back and forth and starting the venue search all over. So
now there's a barrier sometimes that organizations are up against their own fiscal years.
Totally.
And I find that most vendors are willing to work with you on when the deposit or the payment cycle begins if you're locking in that early. But it is an important element to think about, because those resources go quickly,
They do.
and I've seen a lot of organizations have to totally rethink or scrap their plan because a venue was booked or because their auctioneer was no longer available.
And I think that's where relationships come to bear. That's why building relationships with your vendor partners year over year, it's easy to go back when you have a relationship to have that conversation. Like, we want to do that. Can we have it show up in July instead of in June?
You said something interesting, though, that I want to touch on, which is you mentioned the fact that some organizations are going to be driven by timelines based upon like what's in the news cycle.
Yep.
And you specifically mentioned like election cycles. Yep. And I do want to mention this is going to be an election year that the noise is going to be really loud this fall. And so as you're starting to think about your organization's needs and making sure that you're sort of cutting through the email and the noise, now is a great time to be meeting with donors and talking to them about your work and your mission and your upcoming events and engaging them, because the emails are going to get lost. They're going to be like all the social media and email blasts are going to be lost for the next couple of months. So think about using your time for one-on-ones. I think that there's a lot of sort of experts that are speaking right now. There's a great article in Chronicle of Philanthropy. There are a great, number of different tools that are coming out around how do you cut through the political noise. And one of the ways to do it is actually like in-person meet with people and spend time with people versus simply the email blasts.
You bet.
So I do just think that that's a consideration, especially as fall events are coming up.
Which I do think is something I also want to surface the idea, because 2024 is also not over and people are starting to move into, within organizations are moving into their year-end giving mindset and shift. That I think that's something to think about there as well. If we look at the timeline of the election and what that volume is, getting on people's radar for sort of year-end and what that can look like, especially with some of your bigger major donors. That's something to be considering now as well. And also advocate that people take a look at, if you developed videos for your spring fundraising events and started stories there that were only in front of the 200, 500 people that were in that room, how can you start to integrate those into your bigger year-end giving campaign? You have them.
Yeah.
They're beautiful assets. Now, please go ask your special appeal storyteller that you got permission to tell their story at your event, if you can also utilize their story in this way. That's a conversation you need to have as an ethical storyteller. But when you get their permission to be able to do that, it can be a great way for you to take a story that really amplifies your impact and shows it in a really specific way and offer it to folks who may not have been in the room. People may also have loved that story. I love when echoes come back.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, when I've been to an event that told me this really amazing, compelling story, and then 6 months later, I'm shown that story again, and there's a 2-line update. We just wanted to let you know that Jim not only got the job, he got the house. Like, whatever those pieces are, I think we underestimate the power of, I feel like as a donor, I built a relationship in that moment to what I was giving to impact stories like that. And then you call that back and go, this is what happened. This is what your impact is making happen, et cetera.
So July, August, even a little bit into September until we get into like school in, full gear. I know it depends on where you live when school starts, but we see that most nonprofit calendars pick up about mid-September. So that gives a nice little window right now for folks to be thinking ahead about what does year-end giving look like, making sure that they're closing the loop on grant cycle deadlines and reporting, wrapping up their spring support and events with thank yous to corporate sponsors and major donors.
Which is how you should actually finally put them to bed.
Yes.
They're not to bed until you've done that.
No. And then starting to move into individual conversations, donor conversations, sponsor conversations about next year. Next year being that we're talking this summer about 2025, not next year meaning the start of the next school year.
Correct.
So I think it's, getting ahead of your program, starting to get the word out about what's coming and really spending time with people. But that needs to include filling your cup and spending time with people you love. So we hope that everyone is going to have some rest this summer. We know a lot of organizations that do Fridays off or half-day Fridays. We hope that you fill those with adventures and trees and fresh air. And we've heard from a lot of folks that this is a summer that is full of adventure. I think back in June, we broke an all-time record for number of people traveling in the United States. I suspect that this is going to be a summer full of lots of adventures and trips and all sorts of destinations. And we hope that you fill your cup. But while you are taking some time for yourself and you're planning ahead, we wanted to make sure you had a number of resources available to you. So we have a couple of resources to share that are ours, and then we have some other things to make sure that are on your radar. First of all, we have our book, The Planning a Successful Major Donor Event. This is sort of our best practice guide that if you need help getting started and getting up and going on your event, this is the book. We have this book available at elevatenonprofit.com. We also have it available in our show notes, so take a look and check it out. We also are available for consulting time. So if you need to just take a minute and run some ideas by someone, if you need another thought partner, click into elevatenonprofit.com and click that consulting button, book some consulting time with us. It's right in the top right-hand corner of the website. We would love to talk to you about how do you wrap up the events you've had? How do you start to launch the events that you're planning for the future? We'd love to be a resource and a support. And then most importantly, we hope that you put Elevate on your calendar.
Yep, absolutely.
The Elevate conference is, I believe, only one of 2 conferences in the nation I know of that focuses just on fundraising events.
Yep.
And it is a 2-day hybrid conference. You can participate from anywhere in the country. Early bird tickets are available right now. It is coming up in March of 2025, March 12th and 13th.
So in the same way, you need to get that approved and on your calendar.
Yes.
Your sponsors need to hear from you too.
So we want to make sure that you have this on your calendar.
Yep.
We would love to see you at Elevate. It is in person in Portland at Avenue with our friends at the AV department. And if you're able to join us, we are going to be doing all sorts of demos, best practices. We're going to have practitioners there that can share with you their success stories, but we're also going to show you a lot of these things in action. So if you haven't done a paddle raise or a raffle, or you are interested to understand more what a wine pull or golden ticket is, we're going to demonstrate all of these things. We're going to have some of the best technology platforms. We're going to have resources for you on tools that you can implement for your fundraising events. And it's really just a 2-day deep dive into how to just blow your fundraising event goals out of the water. So if you are on the event team at your organization, we hope that you will join us for the Elevate conference. Again, you can go to elevatenonprofit.com. And then I just wanted to give a plug that we will be back in the fall with our 2nd season of the Fundraising Elevator. And coming up on the next season, we're going to be talking to a lot of practitioners about what's working for them, a lot more experts about what's happening in the space. I'm sure we're going to see the election influence a lot of changes in the landscape of fundraising. We hope that you'll tune in. We also are going to be talking about community-centric fundraising, which is an area that I think fundraising events have often sort of been a push-pull over how do we be more inclusive and build more equity into our events. But we also would love to know what you want to hear in season 2. And so please let us know, comment on this episode, give us your thoughts. We also have a survey available on our YouTube page that you can drop in any comments or make suggestions. And if you go to elevatenonprofit.com and click on the podcast, you can even suggest speakers to us or let us know if you want to be on the podcast. We would love to be able to talk to you and learn from you. There are so many people out there doing such incredible things. We hope that you are headed up with us and that you take some time to rest and refill your cup. Kristin, as we send folks off, can I ask you, what is something that you're most looking forward to this summer?
Play and joy.
I think that that's underrated and so important.
It is. How about you?
Rest.
Yes, that too. Definitely.
I think the combination of play, joy, rest, and nature is the other thing. I think being outside is my goal this summer.
Perfect. I love it.
Well, we hope everyone has a great, restful summertime, and we will be back soon with season 2 of the Fundraising Elevator. Thank you all, and we appreciate you for tuning in.
Take care, y'all.
The Fundraising Elevator is produced in partnership with Swaim Strategies at the studios of the AV department. The program is produced by April Clark and directed by Steve Osborne, with audio engineering and original music by Dwayne Anderson and Heidi Christensen. Video production by Chris Peterson, Whitney Gomes, and Nathan Bouquet. Video editing by Steve Osborne. Graphic design by Pendulum Creative Group, and support from Sophia Keller, John Lyles, and Andy Dowsett. Loving the Fundraising Elevator, but wondering how you can talk to Sam and Kristin? Well, now's your chance to do it. Book one-on-one consulting time with Swaim Strategies experts Sam, Kristin, and Mary, and get all your event questions answered. Our team has you covered on strategic planning, fundraising strategy, storytelling, data tools, and registration support. Get the tools and the help you need to make the most impact at your fundraising event. Book at elevatenonprofit.com. The link is also in our show notes. The Fundraising Elevator is recorded at the AV department in Portland, Oregon. For years, they've been our trusted partner, delivering exceptional audio-visual production and videography for nonprofits. In 2020, they transformed into a dynamic live streaming studio, producing more than 900 virtual and hybrid events. Now, we embark on an exciting journey together to bring you this podcast. Seeking the best in live events, video production, and live streaming? We proudly recommend our friends at the AV department. Link in the episode description. At Elevate, we believe in bringing people together. Our online learning platform for fundraising events has webinars, workshops, downloadable tools, and more, designed to save you time and stress when planning your next event. We're getting nonprofit, development, and event planning professionals the tools and ideas they need to create events that inspire donors and raise more money. So join us at elevatenonprofit.com. The link is also in our show notes.